You might be aware that it's Valentine's Day, so what better day to discuss the romance of a prenuptial agreement? Support for marriage contracts has grown dramatically in 2 years, with 55% now backing them in principle, according to YouGov. Prenups were long dismissed as the preserve of celebrities and business tycoon, but that has apparently now changed. We're joined now by Vanessa Friend, a family law solicitor and the head of the family law team at Hodge Jones and Allen. Good afternoon to you, Vanessa.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. Tell us what is behind the rise in this, in prenups.
Well, I think it's just a common sense realization that they're a good idea, because in reality, if you don't have a prenuptial agreement, at the end of your marriage, you're going to have to negotiate a settlement or have a court decide one, and that's a hugely stressful undertaking. So prenuptial agreements help to avoid a lot of that stress.
It's Valentine's Day, and you're telling people that if they go into a marriage, they've got to expect to get divorced someday.
But I don't think that's true. I mean, the way I sort of consider it is that we have house insurance policies, not because we want our roof to fall in, but because if the worst happens, you've got some provision. And it's the same with a prenuptial agreement. Actually, you're thinking, we want this marriage to work, but in the very sad event that it doesn't, then have we got some provision in place? And I actually think they can support a marriage, because they help you to think about how you want the marriage to be run and what your financial position is at the start when you're, at the beginning of your relationship.
Well, you mentioned financial position. I mean, a lot of people find weddings incredibly expensive. There's a lot of costs attached. Can people afford to have a prenup?
Well, they're not. They are bespoke documents, so you do need to think about the cost. They aren't inexpensive, but I would say they're worth their weight. Because if you compare that to what you would spend on a contested divorce, they're a great cost saving.
How much do you have to pay roughly? What's the kind of range to get a prenup in place?
You're probably looking at £5,000 upwards, because the solicitor needs to take your detailed instructions. They need to draft the bespoke document. They then need to enter into some form of negotiation with the other side, even if it's very, quite well agreed. There's likely to be some points of dispute or points that need to be negotiated. And then you need to make sure that your client fully understands, because preparation and having proper advice is going to be absolutely key to whether the agreement is upheld by the court.
That's not cheap. So what kind of couples are you seeing? Because as I said in my intro, you're used to hearing about celebrities and, business tycoons getting one of these things. But are you seeing more sort of ordinary people, in inverted commas, coming forward for a prenup?
Absolutely. When I started doing these, maybe over 10 years ago, it was really confined to the landed gentry, the very rich and celebrities. Now what we see is a range of different people coming forward. So it would start with young couples who maybe haven't generated that much wealth yet, but have an expectation of generating wealth that they want to protect in the future, perhaps a significant inheritance, or they've got a company that's likely to do well. Then you've got people who've already got wealth and sensibly want to protect it. Then at the other end, you may have people who perhaps are on a second marriage and decide that they want to preserve what they've got already for their children, and their partner may feel the same way. So it's now across the board, actually, as opposed to this very sort of niche group that we had before.
Once bitten, twice shy. Just briefly, if it's possible to be brief, you talked about messy divorces and how costly that is, but give us a sense of the kind of things that you've seen that really stand your hair on end.
Well, it's just, if you think about it, when your relationship is breaking down, could there be a worse point to have to deal with negotiating a financial settlement? All of the goodwill has completely disappeared. And at the same time, you're facing these huge life changes of potential for moving house, your children's upset, your own upset. So trying to negotiate a settlement in that context is incredibly hard. Mm-hmm. We also have a very discretionary court system, so we can't give clients a lot of certainty about what the outcome would be if they end up going to court.
Right.
That's an added concern for them.
Vanessa Friend, thank you very much for joining us.